Our first webinar was more NPrinting 16 related. Our second webinar went through just setting up a basic report within the new framework that NPrinting 17 is created in. And today we're going to go over an overview of architecture, performance, deployment scenarios, get more into the back end of things, and how we can set up our system in a kind of a larger enterprise environment. I've done numerous deployments in NPrinting. I've worked with 16 quite a bit, but 17, as they come out, it's getting better and better as far as features. So let's get started. So a really quick overview of just a few slides here of just what is NPrinting for anyone who hasn't really used the product. It's a dynamic reporting tool that utilizes QlikView or Qlik Sense apps. So you've already done the work in developing these apps for your user base. Why not reuse everything you've already created for a report? So this means functions as far as scripting functions for QlikView or Qlik Sense. This means all the objects and reusing the data model. For the reporting formats, you're going to have Microsoft Office Suite, so that's PowerPoint, Excel, Word, and then they have Pixel Perfect PDF for PDF reports and HTML reports for NPrinting. And this is for 16 and 17. So another slide just for those of you that are new. 17 was kind of a new product, kind of like going from QlikView to Qlik Sense. New interface, similar to QMC and Access Point. Everything's through a web service now. The big change is that it's multi-threaded. In NPrinting 16, you could do one report and then have, if you had to run another report at the same time, it would create a queue. Now in NPrinting 17, you can run multiple reports at once. It's multi-threaded. The designer client's built into the web service. It's no longer like a client application. And we deliver reports through Newsstand or the hub, and we have a new install process. So a lot has changed. It's very much like what happened with going from QlikView to Qlik Sense. Last slide remaining for NPrinting in 16 and 17 comparisons. But just two things I want to point out that they still haven't included: cycling reports, which I've used in a project before. This allows you to cycle through a field. Let's say it had 100 sales reps, and I need a report for every sales rep generated. So I click the field value of their specific value, and it would cycle through every single value that's for that field. That does not exist in NPrinting 17 yet. There's ways around it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's one of the big features that was in 16 and isn't in 17. Another big one is on demand. They have supported it for QlikView 12 only, and you have to have certain requirements in order to meet that deployment scenario. Okay, so let's get into the architecture. So if we look at the left side here, here's our QlikView and Qlik Sense servers. Now these can be a single node deployment or multi-node deployment. Of course, performance always goes, or usually goes up when you have a multi-node performance because you have more servers taking on the load of work, whether it's CPU, RAM, or hard drive space. For this middle section, think of this as a single deployment of NPrinting. We have one engine, a scheduler, a web engine, and a repository all installed on the same server. So now this can be a multi-engine deployment too to improve performance. So the front end, we have a web-based UI where we can access the Newsstand, and if you want to design reports, you're going to have to install that on your computer separately if you're accessing via this layout. So as I said, you can also have multiple engines. So we can have, think of these as all different servers here. So we have 3 different engines here. We have still our one NPrinting server here, and we still connect the same way in the front end and connect the same way in the back end. As far as performance goes, there is a linear relationship between number of engines and performance. So let's say we have 6 engines, 6 servers that are going to carry the load of, let's say we had 1,000 users. We will see our performance go up as we add more and more engines to our NPrinting services. Number of CPUs, also a linear relationship for performance. After 12 cores, the return on investment does diminish, though. As far as RAM, we do need RAM to open up these QVW or QVF files. If you don't have enough RAM to open up 7 documents at once and click around in all these documents, as we know, those can be intensive depending on the size, we're going to have trouble with performance. So we do need RAM as well to be able to actually click around, and because all NPrinting really is doing is it's opening an app, clicking these fields or filtering for these fields or these formulas that you've made, and then it's exporting that image or that field or the table or whatever it is. So we need to make sure that we have that on the back end in order for our performance to be okay. So example deployment. So we have a 230 meg app with 20 gigs of RAM consumption, 2 QlikView servers running 20 CPU cores and 256 gigs of RAM. So these are powerful QlikView servers. They can handle big apps. And of course, a 20 gig RAM consumption app is pretty heavy. We have 1 NPrinting server. That's for our web service and our scheduler. And then we have 3 NPrinting engines working together to assist in any reports that we need to create. So in this scenario, if we're just going to folders, because email can be a bottleneck in itself, the creation and delivery of 700 Excel reports on these a pretty large table and a pretty large app would take approximately 15 minutes. So of course you need to scale down or scale up depending on your scenario, but this is kind of an example of what kind of performance you can expect. As far as requirements goes, in a production environment, you want separate servers, right? So as we kind of went into the architecture before, you don't want your Sense engine and your Qlik NPrinting engine to be on the same server. And this is just, it's not that, well, it's not supported, and also because it's going to cause problems, right? You're sharing resources that are doing the same thing. So if I have 10 users clicking around in an app, and then I'm also doing reports based on that app, we're going to have constraints on our performance. Qlik Sense certificates must be installed for all NPrinting computers. So when they're talking to each other, when you have those NPrinting nodes talking to our Qlik Sense nodes, we need to make sure they can talk to each other. Qlik Sense certificates is one of the ways we allow that to happen. So you export that from the QMC, you go to your NPrinting computer, and you import them. Really quickly, just to go through ports and kind of the direction or the architecture standpoint of how this works, is for your Qlik Sense server, inbound we need 4242 and 4243 open, and outbound we need 4242 and 4243 open on your NPrinting engines. So all this means is NPrinting is going to be sending some information through these reports to your Qlik Sense. We need those open for them to directly communicate. Port 4747 must be opened inbound, and port 4747 must be opened outbound for the NPrinting engine. So this, again, all this means is the NPrinting engine needs this port open to connect to the Qlik Sense engine. As far as requirements for versioning, for Qlik Sense, 2.2 or later is required to work with NPrinting. So in order to create connections to your apps, generate reports, you have to be above 2.2. If it works, it's not going to be supported. So if it breaks, let's say you have 2.1 and it breaks, it's not going to be supported by Qlik. Qlik Sense 3.0.1 is required for reports to be distributed to the hub. We're going to go over a quick demo of that a little later. And Qlik Sense 3.1.2 is supported for the use of Qlik NPrinting 17.2 or later. So if you're using a newer version of Qlik Sense, you're going to need a newer version of Qlik NPrinting. And this is getting changed every 6 months when a new version comes out, new requirements of what you need as far as your Qlik Sense app or your Qlik NPrinting app. You need to look into that. And then there's also QlikView requirements, but we're specifically focusing on Sense today. As far as the bare minimum requirements for our engine server and designer for our services, we need Windows Server 2012. I believe you can use Windows 2008 for QlikView 12, but not for Qlik Sense. At least it's not supported. Multiple cores, 4 gigs of RAM, and Microsoft Office Suite. Of course, this is bare minimum. I imagine if you had a 4 gig server or 4 gigs of RAM on a server and 2 cores, and you have even 20 users, you're going to run into bottlenecks as far as performance, depending on the demand of reports. And then we have our install files. So we have NPrinting server, the NPrinting engine, and the designer. Okay, so let's get into a quick demo here. So what I want to do in this demo is we're going to connect to an app. We're going to load in a batch user group with batch filters and data of who that user is and what group they belong to. Because a lot of people who are using NPrinting, it seems there's no dynamic way to load things, but there is. So people find, oh, I have to add users one by one, filters one by one. But there is a workaround for how we can do that. I'm sure in the future that they will try to support an AD connection, so we can just load our AD groups in there. But for now, this is the best solution for loading in multiple users at once. As far as maintaining maintenance from an admin perspective, this is the easiest way. So let's get into it. So I have a server here that's launched. This is just an AWS server. And we're going to go, let's start with our app connection. So if we go to connections here, I already have something generated, but I'll get into how this was generated. So if we go to edit here and we look at our connection, we have our proxy address. So this is whatever you've set your NPrinting or your Qlik Sense server to be. So let's say this is machine name because we have it installed on the server, but let's say it was sense.demo.com. That's what you would put in here. Your app ID, you can find numerous ways. The best way to find it, in my opinion, is just to go to the hub, click on the app, and when you're in the app, on your web browser URL, you'll see the app ID. And then you need a root admin for your Qlik Sense that is going to be creating these reports. They have to have root admin access to Qlik Sense in order to create these reports. If they don't, we're going to see issues. So we can go ahead, we can reload metadata here, and we'll see that it's generating, and we'll just take 30 seconds here until it changes to generated. Okay, and while this is loading, this takes a minute or two. I'm going to go over our batch user load. So this is where the grunt work is really done. So we'll start out on a filter page. So we have our filters lined up here, regional filter, segment filter. These are the names of the filter, a description. This is all metadata information. Whether or not we want to enable this filter, what app we're using, so that was that test connection. So we'll go back to that in a second. And our actual values. So this is for text, this is for numeric, and this is for formulas, such as like dates. If we need to do some kind of, okay, we need to do some kind of expression, we want the last date from this year. That's where we put this. Then we have our user group. We have our password, our username, our password, our domain account. This is essential if you're exporting to the hub, whether or not we're going to enable this user, their location, their attributes here, and lastly, which is important, their groups, right? And the filters that they're connecting to, which is located here. But they're groups because I don't want to click through and add 100 users at once. I really just want to add a group. And roles are important too, right? This is just security. Are they a developer? Are they a Newsstand user? What are they going to be able to do with an NPrinting? And here's our groups here, description and group name. So if we go here, our app has been generated. You can also go to the logs in the back end and see what's going on as far as the report generation. So let's see our users. Right now we don't have anyone. Let's import our user group. So I already gone in here and set this up, but we give it a name, we can give it a trigger, we can do this once every week, every day, and we have that report that I just pulled up. This is where it exists. And these are what allows us to create a dynamic load. If users are not present, should they be deleted? If someone was modified in some way, should they be updated? Should we remove users that aren't in the file? This is based on your requirements, but this is how we can kind of create a dynamic load. As long as we do all our grunt work in this file, we should be okay as far as what we need to create on this end. Because this can get very difficult if you don't have a file like this, because we're going to be managing one thing at a time. Things aren't going to be dynamic. That can be a pain for an admin, especially if you have a large user load. You'll spend all your time adding one-by-one users and filters. So this is a good way to manage all that you need to manage. So let's run this. As you can see, as you saw before, we have no users right now. So we're going to run this batch load. It has that test app. If it doesn't have that test app, it's going to fail. So now we see, okay, we imported these filters. If that test app wasn't there, it wouldn't work because we can't import these filters. We created groups, we created users, and it completed successfully. So if we go to our users here, I can see, okay, I was created dynamically. I have my details, part of the consulting group Chicago office. I have my filters here. As you can see, my filter was assigned to me. I didn't have to go in and manually do it. My filter here, regional filter, John Ramirez, regional filter. I didn't have to do anything where I had to add this one by one, whereas if you're doing this in a manual process, this is what you have to do. And then I have my roles as well, so dynamic as well. So that's a quick overview as far as how we import users. So let's see how that actually works. Let's make sure that, okay, I've imported my users correctly. I want to create a quick report. I'm not going to really design anything here. I just want to show the functionality. I want a quick report with it filtered for my selections. So as you can see, my metadata has loaded in correctly. I have the right filters, right groups. Let's create a report next. So we'll call this test 2. We'll do an Excel report here and our test app. If you have a template already created, because you can design something that looks very appealing as far as to the end user, you can load your template here. For now, we're just going to have an empty template. So we load that in. And we don't need any filters because we already have that assigned at a user level. We don't need anything at the report level if we have it at the user level, which is the lowest grade. So we'll go to Edit Template here and open our designer. So there's 2 things I want to test. I want an object. I already looked through this app. I like this. This is just sales per day. And I want to know, just for testing purposes, I want to know what my selection state is here. So this is an easy formula. In Qlik Sense, Qlik View, they have the same scripting logic to get my selection state in my app. So that looks good to me. I'm going to create that and drag that in right here, and then I'm going to save and close. Report's been created. I don't need to do anything here. I want to publish my task. I've already imported my users. Now I want to distribute my reports via the hub and Newsstand and make sure that my reports are looking good. So I'm going to create a task here. We'll call it test 2. In no way are these related, but I'm just going to use this. Our test app, create. We're going to add our reports here. Test 2. We're going to do an Excel format. We're not going to use email in this case. Go to our user groups, And I don't want to do one by one, right? That can be a pain, just adding recipients one by one. I'm going to do my whole group. So this is going to be distributed to not only myself, but also to Shima and Anna here. So we have Newsstand enabled. We have our report enabled. Okay, add recipients. Filters, again, we have it at the lowest grain at the user level. We don't need to add any filters. Lastly, I want it to go to a hub. So I'm going to save. If you're doing email, you can do your message here. We have no triggers or conditions, so we're okay there. But that's if you need this report to run on certain time frames or certain conditions, we can do that. Okay, so I think we're set up here. Let's do a run now and see what this report gives us. So now on the back end, it's going through, it's opening, it's connecting to that Qlik Sense server that you've set up on a separate server. It's logging in with the credentials you've given it, which is a root admin. It's selecting the filter, and then it's also going into that domain account, and it's going to give me that report at the hub, which is really nice. So now we have two ways of getting the reports online. You can go, okay, you're accessing your app, you want to go to the hub. Now we'll see our report in the hub, or you can go to the Newsstand. So let's start with the Newsstand, and then we'll go to the hub. So I need to do, because I'm logged in as NP admin, I need to create a new window here, go to the Newsstand. So I set up my password within this file, right? So it's just password. Okay, and I see test 2, perfect. Take a look, I can download this, I see, okay, filters for here, and this can be filters for anything, right? And so we can have numerous filters here based on our rep. At a regional level, they need to see certain segments on a daily basis. You can subscribe to reports here. So if we need to see this every day, I need this refreshed every single day because this is a very important report, I can do that. I need it every week. And that allows the users to kind of work on their own as far as how they want these reports scheduled. And lastly, we're going to go to the hub, right? So let's close out of this. We're going to do another incognito window, and we are going to go to our hub. Log in with our credentials here. Should be the same as AD if you create this properly. We always want this to be based on our Sense credentials as well. And we'll log in. And give it a second. Okay, and we go to our reports here, and we see test 2, perfect. Download our report, and we have a report in our Excel, and this can be PowerPoint, this can be whatever. So instead of going to multiple places, a user logs into the hub, they're going to see all their reports, their work, all their streams that they're available. This is based on this just demo app. And this can be very useful for a company that not only needs dynamic dashboards, but also reports as well. And we have one consolidated place for all this, and we can also get them emailed too. So not only do we have email, we have it all consolidated into one location, and we have a Newsstand. So Newsstand can be used for users who may not be within the dashboard environment, outside of the dashboard environment. So now you can kind of get a feel for, okay, here's what we need for deployment as far as configurations, a brief overview of how to do that. We have reports generated dynamically from, we have our user base loaded dynamically, all our groups loaded dynamically, all our filters loaded dynamically, all added into our NPrinting services without doing too much work. This is all we really need to do to get everything up and running. Okay, so we're going to open it up to Q&A. I appreciate everyone's time. Shima, back to you.
Thank you, John. It was very interesting, personally, to me, knowing how long it takes to generate all the NPrinting and such. So at this point, I'd like to open up for Q&A. While you're typing the questions, I will go through the next webinars that are coming up. The next webinar will be presented by Phil Bishop, who's the president of Infozone. He will be talking about pharma and Qlik, a 23-year relationship. You may be surprised how many features and functionalities in Qlik or Qlik Sense came from the pharma industries. So it may be interesting to hear about that if you're in pharma organization perhaps. And then after that, we have What's New in Qlik Sense version June 2017. That's the next release that Qlik will have for Qlik Sense. We're having this on July 27th. You can already register for that session as well. And all the sessions that we do here at webinar are recorded and published at the Zone community portal. So if you go to the zone.infozoneus.com, you can filter to video in the knowledge base page and play all the videos that we have recorded. So that being said, I will go back to Q&A, and I'm seeing some questions coming up. So John, have you run into this issue such as, are there plans to address in the next release? I'm not sure what this issue means. Do you understand this?
Yeah, maybe. Can you elaborate? We see a Q&A for others that run into this issue as well. Are there plans to address this in the next release? What's the issue you're speaking of? I'm assuming maybe loading filters and users, but I'll give you a few seconds here to elaborate on that.
Okay, so while we're waiting for this question, then I'll ask you another question that came in. Can a user without a sense token view reports in the Newsstand?
Yeah, so the neat thing about NPrinting is they don't have to be a Qlik Sense user to receive reports. So it is separated out. Now, ideally you do want people to receive those reports in the hub too. That's a great feature. But in the end, if you have people that just need to receive reports, why not use your NPrinting license that you've already paid for to your advantage? These people can receive a view of the dashboard without actually having to get a license to click within the dashboard.
Okay, the next question, is on-demand available for Sense?
So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Sense and on-demand is not available yet, but QlikView 12 is available for NPrinting 17.
Okay. What's the best way to create and import a user list?
Yeah, so that user the user list I created in this demo, I would recommend an extract from your AD if you're using AD, which most big enterprise organizations are. You can create some kind of script to fill in these attributes, and some of them aren't necessary. There are some attributes that are not needed, but for sure you can get domain user from your AD. You can pull that into a script. You can hide this behind a folder that only one user, the NP admin, has access to, so that when this does load, no other people can get into this list. Your server's probably already behind numerous firewalls, so it's not available to the public, but you also want to secure that file too, so making it only available to that admin. And then your grunt work as an NPrinting admin would be to create all those filters to what app and what are those filters going to be. Okay, Shima, I think I lost you for a second.
Sorry.
I'm going to go over the rest of the QA here.
Okay.
Okay, so Evan has mentioned that, okay, we changed the filters for user in the sheet, but the old filters aren't removed. Evan, I can look into that. We'll get your email list after this, and I can make sure I can go through and test and see what's going on with that. I would think if that hasn't been fixed already, The one version I'm testing with is 17.3.1, so it's the latest release. If that hasn't been fixed already, I would think this would be fixed in the next release, which is supposed to be soon. I was expecting it for this webinar, but I don't believe it's been released yet. We have another question. Is there an option to attach a chart to an email message body and not as an attachment in NPrinting 17? I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look into it. I wouldn't think there would be, because I think you get the attachment as far as what do you want to give to this user, and there's no, in the body, which is just text, the program's just saying what text do you want to add here. I wouldn't think so, but I haven't explored that opportunity before. So I can take a look into it, and we have your email, so I can take a look and see if I can find anything on that. Evan elaborated one more time. So if filter 1 was supposed to be applied, yeah, right. So that's the same question. Yeah, so I'll get back to you guys on that. Evan, I'll give you a few seconds to answer, but do you know what version you're running right now? Okay, so I'm one version ahead of you. Yeah, I'll get back to you. And those were all good questions. You know, if you guys do need help in NPrinting deployments, feel free to reach out to us, or have questions like what we just went through with the Q&A. We're always open to our customers. So Shima, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate all your attendance today, as well as for those of you who asked the questions. I hope this session was very useful and informative for you guys. At this point, I'd like to close this session officially. Thank you very much. Practice session. And I have your slides in the recording, so you can just say what you need to say after I pass on to you, okay?
Do you want me to present and just do it really quick? First slide.
No, it's okay. I just need your voice, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Shima Ozins. Today, we are running the session for NPrinting 17.3 and Qlik Sense. Today's presenter is John Ramirez, and again, my name is Shima Ozins. I'm the host for today's session. So that being said, I will pass it to you, John. Go ahead.
Thanks, Shima. Hello, everyone. My name is John Ramirez. I'm a consultant for Infozone. I've worked with NPrinting in the past, numerous deployments. In previous webinars, we talked about NPrinting 16. In our last webinar, we went over basic report generation for NPrinting 17. And today, we're going to talk about the back-end side of things, architecture, deployment scenarios, examples of how to import a large number of users with dynamic filters, and a few other things as well. So let's get started.
Perfect.